Hey, it's a Tuesday night, and I have little Sparky here. This is the newest member of the family here. He is a Chihuahua puppy, and he is 8 weeks old, and I know most of you guys are just desperately hoping to see the dog and not listen to my voice, but he's pretty sleepy right now, so he's probably going to sleep on my lap while I go through Act 2, Scene 2, and the Hills of Zion. Alright, Chihuahua. Here we go, I got my clicker. Trying to make this a little bit more coherent than the last take I did. Ooh, wow, that was sketchy. All right, so summary, we've got our cross-examination, right? We got the entire trial. We've got Drummond on the defense, Brady on the prosecution, and away we go. Do we have cross-examination? Not exactly, right? We have Rachel and Brady, the only two witnesses that get up on the stand, and neither of them are cross-examined. Nature of cross-examination is where you have the state brings in a witness, in this case Rachel, and then they ask her a bunch of questions, and then the defense gets to ask her questions. But unfortunately, Brady's questions are so upsetting for Rachel that she breaks down, and Kate says to Drummond, "Don't bother, don't question her because she's upset," and it's fair. Because the way that Brady got the information from her was shady. Remember he took her off earlier and was like having a conversation with her in private? That's where the information came from. And as we all know, hearsay is not admissible testimony, but it doesn't seem to matter in this particular case. So Rachel does not get cross-examined. And again, it's pretty hard because, again, the whole prosecution's case wants to prove that Kate's taught evolution, right? He's already convicted in the minds of the town. And what Rachel's testimony does is basically only reinforce the way that they feel about him. Remember, she says basically the main sticking point is he questioned his faith when Reverend Brown said that the Stebbins boy was writhing and burning in hellfire when he had drowned. Because the boy had not been baptized, therefore he was living in sin, and therefore was writhing in hellfire when he died from drowning. And Kate's is like, that seems pretty terrible. Why would we do that? He didn't denounce religion. He didn't go after Brown. He just stopped going to church. And that was pretty bad in the eyes of the townspeople. But anyway, Drummond doesn't get to cross-reference her or cross-examine her. She simply leaves the courtroom. And then the state rests. They don't have any other witnesses to call, which is odd. You'd think they'd have more than one, but they don't really need it because they know that they have this case sewn up already. Then the defense gets roasted, right? Drummond comes in, he's like, I have these many expert witnesses. They're all going to testify about the science. And nope, that's not allowed. Brady objects to every single one, and the judge rejects all of them. Drummond, with no place left to go, decides to call Brady to the stand, and that's pretty dicey for Brady. If you're the prosecuting attorney, you do not want to do anything that will impede your case. You might say something up on the stand which will unwind your whole argument, which Brady does. But Brady can't help it because he is very proud. He's arrogant. He is a tragic hero, and his flaw is his pride. His pride says, hey, what's the worst that could happen, right? And he gets up there and makes a bit of a fool of himself toward the end. But again, Drummond leads him to that. Again, he could have stopped after he got the 25th hour, but he did not. He continued to dig at Brady's character so that the townspeople could see the reaction that would come out of Brady, right? Because all they see is this big shiny exterior, but on the inside, there's not a lot going on there, right? And so Brady's pride leads him to the stand where he is bound to fall. Okay, Drummond's argument, the one in blue from page 13, here it is in all of its glory, but orange and a different text, different font. Basically, it just has a lot of really great points, and we're going to break it down into two chunks. All right, the first chunk is this one. The progress is not a bargain. You have to pay for it. What does that mean, right? And he gives some great examples here. When you get the telephone, you give up privacy. What does that mean? That means that when you are in your own home, someone else can contact you there. Whereas before, most of the time, they wouldn't. Unless it was a dire emergency, they'd come knock on your door. Otherwise, you don't know. They're not going to get in touch with you. But again, so you give up privacy for the convenience of being able to talk to people that are 500 miles away. Think about that, right? It used to be a letter. We'd write a letter to Ma. Ma lives 600 miles away. And that letter would be put on the back of a unicorn that would fly through the clouds and eventually find its way to, I don't know, Narnia or something, and give your mother that letter. But now the telephone makes it so that it's instant communication, right? Right away. The other one, the ladies' right to vote. Well, okay, great, you can vote, but that means that you no longer have the convenient excuse that I'm not involved. It's out of my hands, right? Remember the difference between the will to do something and the inability to do something, right? If you choose not to vote, it is different than not being able to vote, right? You're shirking a responsibility there. So you gain that extra responsibility and the inability to hide behind the petticoat and the powder puff. And again, the gasoline, the clouds smelling like gasoline. What a great line. I really like it. Again, that's the miracle of flight, right? The birds lose their wonder and the clouds will smell of gasoline. Think about the pollution and all the other things, the convenience of the cars and all the rest of it that we have today. The price of a lot of that progress is pollution. All right, and the cost. And some of the things I gave you on the worksheet, I got some great responses. I put down cell phones, realizing now that's old. We have smartphones now. I also put down texting, and I also put down the internet and social media and real-life connections, right? So the first thing with smartphones, right, we have these things. Everybody has smartphones now, right? It used to be that you just had a cell phone, but now you have 24/7 access to all the information ever. It's right there. All you got to do is say, hey, computer's name, right? And the computer in there says, hey, I've been listening to you the whole time. What do you want to know? All right, so you have 24/7 accessibility, but that also means that they can get to you whenever, wherever, right? The phone at my house when I was growing up, my mom gets a phone call. I can't get a phone call. Not that I would, but I couldn't get one because it would buzz. It would be beep, beep, busy signal, only one line. Nobody else can call, right? Texting, again, we give up the connection of the human voice. I can instantly tell you something, right? But I don't hear your voice. And we are a little bit further away, a little more disconnected, right? Each step of the way. Internet makes us lazy. If you want to know something, you just go on the phone, check the internet. It'll tell you what you need to know. And social media takes away that real life connection, right? I have 14,000 friends on Facebook, and I know 3 of them, that kind of thing, right? And you never know if anybody's actually real out there, right? I'm going to set up a Facebook page for Sparky, right? This little guy who's snoozing again. It's 9 o'clock. I don't want you asleep yet. He's usually up at like midnight barking at me. All right, anyway, so those are the costs. When we make steps forward, there's always something that's left behind, and it's always at a cost. All right, so Drummond's argument, the other part again, is that Darwin moves us to the hilltop. We can see where we came from, but also where we're going. And now his comment about, we must abandon our faith in the pleasant poetry of Genesis. Now, Genesis, again, is that first book in the Bible that talks about, it has the Christian creation story in it. And he says we have to give up on that. But he's not saying you have to give up your faith entirely. Just your faith in this particular section, because there's now with Darwin's ideas, Darwin's theory, we have pretty solid science to dispute what happened in that particular book. It doesn't mean that none of it happened. It means that some of it might not have happened the way that it's written down there. And again, he's not insinuating that all faith must be given up. Now, again, his statement that ideas are bigger than cathedrals is again that the human mind is something that's constantly moving us forward, right? And if we don't move forward with our ideas, then where will we end up? And we again must think for ourselves. And again, Brady doesn't do that very much, right? What is it that the Drummond says to him? He's like, "What do you think about her?" And Brady responds, "I don't think about the things that I don't think about." Right, which is dangerous. You should be thinking about things. If you have questions, it's good to ask questions. Right? And then the final thing is the 25th hour. The argument that Brady the point at which in the argument where Brady breaks down is the 25th hour. Once Drummond gets to that point when he's like, hey, could you admit at least that potentially that first day wasn't 24 hours like a 24-hour day is today? Once Brady's like, yeah, it might have been 25 hours, sure. And that's it. The dominoes have started to fall. If you cannot determine that it is 24 hours, you cannot determine it if it is 10 million years, like Drummond says. But what's interesting about that, though, is that Drummond could have been more acidic toward religion. He could have poked more holes in the theories and the ideas in Genesis, but by going into this day concept, the day as it's referred to in that book, could have been longer than the 24-hour day that we understand today, allows both ideas, creationism, Darwinism, to somewhat coexist. If you want to believe that the entire everything was created in 7 days, it wasn't the dog, then you can. But you just have to accept the fact that maybe those days were 10 million years long, right? And it doesn't just say one or the other. It allows for both, and that's really important to the way Drummond thinks, right? If you're able to think for yourself, and when you think for yourself, you decide that you like the idea in that book of Genesis, then that's great. That's you. That's wonderful. You've come to it on your own. But if you come to the idea that is contrary to that on your own as well, that's the way it should be done. It shouldn't be that you just take things at face value and accept them as they're given, like Brady does. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for Act 2, Scene 2. Moving on to the Hills of Zion. Now, again, this was the what do they call it? Primary source document. Mencken wrote it when he was in Dayton, Tennessee, observing and reporting on the Scopes trial. And so here we go. We got to know a little bit about Mencken. He was a journalist, an essayist, a satirist, culture critic, and expert on American English. The best English, right? Nah. Anyway, we'll learn more about him next week. Okay? And you take what he says with a grain of salt or a dump truck full, depending, because of the lens through which he sees it. And very much like Hornbeck, he comes across as the educated, patronizing northern Yankee in a southern town, laughing at the yokels kind of thing, right? And again, Hornbeck's cynicism is nowhere near as deep or as acidic as Mencken's. All right, but again, it's one thing to if Mencken is not the if Mencken has a pretty contrary about that these people are ignorant, that these people are just out of their minds, but in fact they're just practicing their faith the way that they practice their faith. And again, the most important thing is to be able to see that, accept it, and move on with your life. You are not in control of other people, and if they're doing something different from you and they're not harming anybody, then live and let live, right? But again, Mencken is cynical about it. He's snarky about it. He's like, I don't understand what's going on. He doesn't have a full picture. He doesn't stay the whole time, but still, he sees people speaking in tongues. He sees people jumping around, and it's like he just, he doesn't really understand it. And he takes it for what it is in his own mind, right? But anyway, so had it not been through Mencken's lens, had it been through someone who is more sympathetic, someone who's more able to understand a contrary point of view, it might have sounded to come off a lot different. It's similar to the prayer meeting in the book, but not very much, in that it's a prayer meeting. Right? In the book, we've got Reverend Brown up there, and he's fire and brimstone, and Kate's is going to hell. In this particular case, we have members of the congregation who start speaking in tongues, and then other people go to them, and they interact, right? And it's just people out there expressing their faith. And again, it's surreal to an outsider. All right, so the big question this week, here we go. through what lens do you see the world, right? And for this, it's puppy time. Here he is again, because he's sleeping too much. And I want him to sleep tonight. So Sparky says that we all have many lenses, right? I have the lens of the white male. I have the lens of the father, the husband, the teacher, musician, the space cowboy, whatever they may be. And we all see things differently. We all have a lot of lenses, right? We start out with some. We pick more up along the way. We throw some away. It depends on what you do and where you live and how you live and who you live with and the rest of it. So pick one, whatever lens you want. If you want to pick the gender lens, if you want to pick the race lens, if you want to pick the age lens, if you want to pick the I like dogs lens, whichever one you like. And then determine how it impacts your understanding of what you see, right? And that could be, how do you see the COVID situation? How do you see the no more school this year situation? How do you see the movie Star Wars? How do you see the puppy and sleep in my hands, just so sweet? Or are you allergic to dogs and you see it through an allergy lens and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad there's a video screen between us. Anyhow, I will put this up as a Google Classroom question, as so many of you have requested. And we will be doing a live video chat soon. Probably next week. And then I'll have more information about that, because I'm still trying to figure that out. So this will be a Google Classroom question, and the last thing you have to do this week. Next week we'll read a little bit more about Mencken and get ready for the thing at the end of this. The puppy says, I'm too tired to do this anymore, man. I want to go to sleep. So I'm going to take this guy and put him in his bed, and I will see you guys soon. Good night. Are you going to lick my ear?